Why is poker floating strategy changing? Imagine sitting at a poker table where everything you thought you knew about floating is shifting right before your eyes. That's because the way players use floating in the game is evolving quickly. Floating, which means calling a bet on the flop with the plan to bluff or take the pot later, used to be a straightforward move. But now, it's more complex and situational. As players become more skilled, they are adjusting how they approach floating. They are more selective about when to float and how to follow up on later streets. One big reason for this change is that opponents are no more careful with their continuation bets. They tend to bet only with stronger hands or on favorable textures. This makes floating less profitable because floaters can no longer rely on opponents folding or betting weakly. Instead, they need to have a plan that includes hands with potential to improve or blockers to strong holdings. Another factor is how different types of players respond to floating. Against loose players who call often, floating can still work because they tend to call down with weak hands. But against aggressive or skilled players, floating becomes riskier. These opponents are more likely to raise or fold correctly, punishing floaters who don't have a strong plan or a good read on their range. The overall shift in strategy also favors more aggressive moves like 3-betting before the flop or folding rather than floating passively. This means players are less likely to float unless they have a very specific reason. They want to apply pressure with strong hands or fold early to avoid losing chips. Bet sizing has also changed. Players now use variable sizes to maximize value with their strong hands and minimize losses with bluffs. This makes it harder for floaters to read whether an opponent's bet is weak or strong, requiring them to be more careful with their float decisions. Gathering information about opponents has become more important too. Modern players watch betting patterns, tendencies, and board textures to decide when floating is worth the risk. Floating is no longer just a simple call. It's a dynamic move that depends on the situation. In post-flop play, floaters need to be more selective with their hands. They should focus on hands with blockers or potential to improve. Floating multi-way pots is less profitable because more players mean more chances for someone to have a strong hand. It's also smart to combine floating with strategic follow-up bets or checks on later streets. This can put pressure on opponents and help win pots when they fold. Understanding who tends to fold to turn or river bets helps decide when floating is a good idea. Overall, the way floating is used today is more about reading the game and opponents than just calling and bluffing. It's a tactic that requires careful thought, good hand selection, and the ability to adapt to changing betting patterns. That's why you see this strategy shifting. Players are making smarter, more informed decisions to stay ahead in the game.